In the secluded village of Stonewood, nestled amidst dense forests and fog-laden hills, an ancient tale whispered through generations kept the children from straying too far into the woods. They spoke of the Slender Man, a tall, faceless specter clad in a dark suit, with unnaturally long arms that could reach out and snatch unwary souls. It was said that he lurked in the darkest part of the forest, where the trees were so thick that daylight feared to tread. Eliza, a bold and somewhat rebellious teenager, scoffed at these legends. Her curiosity and her skeptical nature led her to challenge the old stories, dismissing them as mere tools to keep children in line. Armed with a camera and a flashlight, she ventured into Stonewood Forest one chilly October evening, determined to dispel the myths and prove there was nothing to fear. The forest greeted her with a cold silence that hung heavily in the air, broken only by the crunch of dried leaves underfoot. As she delved deeper, the light from the setting sun struggled to pierce the canopy, and shadows grew long and twisted around her. Eliza felt a prickling sensation on the back of her neck, and the first seed of doubt planted by the enveloping gloom. Ignoring the chill that began to settle on her bones, she pressed on until she reached the heart of the forest, where the trees were so close together their branches entwined in a macabre dance. Here the air was colder, and a thin mist floated above the ground, swirling around her feet as she walked. Eliza's flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced across the gnarled tree trunks. It was here, in this eerie setting, that she first sensed she was not alone. A tall, slender shadow appeared between the trees, flickering at the edge of her vision. Every time she turned to look, it vanished, reappearing moments later, slightly closer than before. Her initial bravery faltering as the tales of her childhood surged back to her mind. The Slender Man was said to be relentless, a silent stalker of those who dared to intrude upon his domain. Eliza realized too late that her skepticism might have been misplaced. The air grew oppressively still, the silence of the forest absolute, as if nature itself held its breath. Then, a rustling sound echoed softly from behind, a slow, deliberate crunching of leaves. She spun around, her flashlight beam landing on a figure so tall and thin it seemed impossible. Its face was blank, devoid of features, and his arms hung limply by its sides, reaching almost to the ground. Eliza stumbled back, her fear mounting as the figure advanced. With each step it took, the air around her grew colder, the darkness deeper. She tried to run, but her legs were heavy, her movements sluggish as though moving through water. The figure continued its silent approach, and as it neared, Eliza could see the dark tendrils that seemed to whisper from its form, reaching out towards her. In a final, desperate attempt, Eliza raised her camera, the flash illuminating the forest in a stark burst of light. The Slender Man halted, momentarily taken back by the brightness. Using this brief respite, Eliza turned and ran, not stopping until she burst from the tree line and into safety of the village. Breathless and trembling, Eliza looked back at the forest. The edge of the trees seemed to pulsate with a dark menace, but no figure emerged. She knew, however, that she had been lucky to escape, her skepticism replaced by a bone-deep certainty that some legends are rooted in terrifying truths. The camera, when later examined, revealed nothing but blurred images of trees and fog. Nothing tangible, nothing definite, yet Eliza could never again deny the chilling presence that haunted Stonewood Forest. In the gritty industrial district of Greyport, the aging Stirling Works factory stood as a testament to the city's once thriving manufacturing prowess. Now, semi-abandoned and operating at a fraction of its capacity, the factory had become a place of whispered rumors among the locals, rumors of shadows that lingered a little too long and sounds that echoed a little too strangely. Tom, a skilled welder with a rational mind, had been working at Stirling Works for almost 2 years. Despite the eerie atmosphere and the occasional chill that would travel down his spine, Tom focused on his work, attributing the strange occurrences to the old building's suddenly noises and drafts. However, his dismissals became harder to maintain as the spectral events grew increasingly frequent and vivid. The first of the specters Tom encountered was an old man, appearing to be in his 60s, dressed in anachronistic attire consisting of trousers, a button-up shirt, and a sweater vest. The old man would stand near Tom, observing him work from impossible angles and corners where no living person could comfortably fit. His face was always blurred, indistinct, and whenever Tom tried to confront him directly, the figure would vanish into thin air, visible only from the peripheral of his vision. The second ghost, a shorter, rounder man dressed in worn work clothes, preferred the obscure corners of the factory. He often appeared behind the dusty curtains of the old storage windows, or reflected in the grimy glass, hands clasped behind his back, watching Tom silently. Despite their startling appearance, these two specters seemed benign, merely curious observers of the living. However, the third ghost was an entirely different and far more menacing presence. Tom's first encounter with this aggressive specter was utterly terrifying. It charged at him in a full sprint, while he was working late one evening at his welding bench. Out of the corner of his eye, Tom caught the rapid, unnerving approach. As he turned, the figure was suddenly in his face, only to disappear as quickly as it had appeared. The ghost didn't limit itself to frightful apparitions. It actively interfered with Tom's work, turning off his welding equipment, knocking tools off tables, and emitting disturbing, guttural noises close enough to be heard over the roar of machinery. Accompanying the malevolent ghosts were small, shadow-like creatures that scurried along the floors and walls. These entities didn't interact directly with Tom, but seemed to herald the more dangerous ghost's arrival, adding to the oppressive atmosphere whenever the third specter made its presence known. The areas of the factory where these apparitions occurred began to give Tom the major heebie-jeebies, reminding him of past encounters with malevolent spirits. He started to document the occurrences, trying to find patterns or explanations, but the more he discovered, the less he understood. The factory, with its history of accidents and forgotten corners, seemed to hold deeper secrets than just discontinued machinery and obsolete production lines. One late evening, driven by a mix of fear and determination, Tom decided to confront these spirits. He stayed back, turning off all machines to silence the factory, save for a single emergency light that cast long shadows across the floor. Sitting quietly at his bench, he addressed the empty air. "If you have something to say, now's the time," Tom called out, his voice echoing off the metal walls. The response was a chilling silence at first, then a low murmur growing into a clear voice. It was the old man, his tone mournful, speaking of a time when the factory was a lively place, filled with hopes and dreams, now forgotten and lost. He spoke of accidents unreported, lives unlamented, and his own unfinished business tied to the very bench where Tom worked. As the old man's voice faded, the atmosphere lightening, the oppressive feeling lifting slightly, Tom realized that these spirits, these echoes of the past, were bound by their unresolved lives and untimely departures. By acknowledging their presence and their stories, Tom hoped to give them some semblance of peace, or at least an understanding that they were not forgotten. Leaving the factory that night, Tom looked back at the looming structure of Stirling Works, its windows reflecting the moonlight, no longer just a place of employment, but a repository of lives and stories intertwined with its own. While the sightings did not cease entirely, Tom's approach to them changed. He saw them not just as hauntings, but as remnants of the human condition, clinging to the shadows of the world they once knew. In the quaint town of Elmswood, where rows of Victorian homes lined the streets like echoes of a bygone era, the Harrows found themselves the new owners of one such aging residence. The charm of Elmswood House, with its ivy-draped walls and stained glass windows, belied the strange energies that murmured beneath its floors and within its walls. Lucas, an only child with a vivid imagination, claimed the bedroom on the first floor next to the living room. His parents, preferring the seclusion, occupied a room across the vast hallway on the other side of the house. Life in Elmswood House was a peaceful affair until the nights began to whisper of otherworldly visitors. It was a windless night 3 years after they had moved in when Lucas first heard it. 3 loud knocks jolted him from sleep, so forceful they seemed to shake the very foundation of the house. They echoed from the upper part of the bedroom wall, a place no earthly hand could reach. Baffled but too groggy to fear, Lucas turned in his bed and allowed sleep to reclaim him. But peace was short-lived. As he hovered on the brink of dreams, 2 more knocks sounded, distinct and deliberate. This time, a shiver of fear coursed through him. He grabbed his phone to check the time. 3:55 a.m. A haunting hour when night is deepest and the veil between worlds thinnest. Lucas sat up, his eyes fixed on the wall. The room felt colder, the shadows deeper. Silence hung heavy until another pair of knocks echoed, this time from a different part of the room. It was as if something or someone was moving within the walls themselves. Morning couldn't come soon enough, and with the light of day, Lucas felt the fear of the night ebb away. At breakfast, he recounted the experience to his parents, who exchanged uneasy glances, but dismissed the possibility of any supernatural occurrences. They assured him no one had been awake at that ungodly hour, and certainly no one was knocking on walls. Unsatisfied and unnerved, Lucas decided to investigate the history of Elmswood House. His inquiries led him to the local library, where old newspapers and dusty tomes spoke of the house's original owner, a reclusive man known as Mr. Whitmore, who had reportedly died under mysterious circumstances, right in the home. Armed with this knowledge, Lucas approached the next night with a mix of dread and determination. As the clock neared 3:55 a.m., he sat awake, a digital recorder placed by his side to capture any phenomena. Right on schedule, the knocks returned. First 3, then 2. Lucas spoke into the darkness, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Who are you? What do you want?" The room fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. And then a voice, barely a whisper, filled the space. "Home. My home." Lucas, holding his breath, listened as the voice grew fainter, repeating the words until they were but a sigh, lost in the wind of the coming dawn. The next day, Lucas played the recording to his parents, who could no longer deny the presence in their home. The family agreed to learn more about Mr. Whitmore and find a way to help his spirit find peace. Nights in Elmswood House grew calmer as Lucas continued to engage with the unseen visitor, acknowledging his presence and expressing a willingness to coexist. Eventually, the knocks ceased, replaced by an occasional creak or sigh of the house settling, perhaps a sign that Mr. Whitmore had found some measure of peace. Lucas learned that even in the quietest towns and the oldest houses, the past never truly rests, always knocking, waiting to be acknowledged and remembered. And in Elmswood House, the past had found a voice, and a young boy had found the courage to listen. Farewell, God loves you, and stay blessed.